Hi, I'm Sarah Ann Cromwell, and this is a conversation with Rodrigo Orquera of Misfits Music about how he made his rock workshops accessible to my friends at Sandwell Visually Impaired. I am a 5'6", slim-build white woman with shoulder-length brown hair and blue glasses. Give me all your learning and all your
Hey,
tips.
I mean, I've been thinking about it a little bit, and I have like a few very specific things to mention.
Mm.
Um, I mean, looking back, if I'm being honest, I didn't feel nervous or unprepared for it before taking over the project, and it's been a very, very pleasant experience in general. I think some of the participants mentioned this as well, that I think it always depends on the people, right? And the number of people, the setting, and I think half of that, it also depends on the people organizing these things. So that's thanks to you, thanks to Tony, thanks to Sandra, and this very open way of just introducing me to the group and giving me plenty of freedom as well. So I felt very comfortable in the learning process because I was very aware that there was going to be a learning curve in the first couple of sessions, and there's always more things to learn. So from my side, again, I'm going to try to name mainly two things that I think they are important when working with groups in general, and of course it applies to this setting as well. I think the first one is, I'm going to say it, being honest and being transparent from a leading point of view. I've seen this with other leaders as well, and maybe in the past I would have made these mistakes as well, which is when I do make a mistake, like not to acknowledge that, and trying to cover my steps and trying to divert the attention to something different or things like that. It's like being very transparent with that. Like, it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to let people know about the things that I don't know, or if I'm trying something new, or if I'm trying something that doesn't work, even if it's as simple as the songs that I choose, which it's always in this case, I mean, of course, it's because it's a music workshop, but the songs, they don't always work, and there's not always a very clear reason why. Sometimes it's just a bad choice. Sometimes it's a song. Nobody enjoys singing a song that you don't like, right? So if you don't find a way of, yeah, presenting that song in a way that it's attractive, sometimes it's okay to just leave a song out and try something different. But that applies to so many different things, including just the way that I talk to the group, the kind of work that we do, the different exercises, the times that we dedicate to having a chat, to having a break. So in general, I think it's, over the years, I think that's one of the most important things, and that makes things easier from the start, which is being honest with people and with yourself, of course. I'm sorry, I'm coughing a lot. It's that time of the year.
It is.
Does that make sense? Sort of, before
Yeah,
I
it
move
does. It
to the
does.
next one.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And if I can get my voice back, I have thought of one more thing that I think is crazy important. Um, Let me just try to remember the things that I wanted to say. I should have written this down, sorry. Um, well, I think, how do I say this in an easy way? Just give me 1 second. I think I actually made some notes a couple of days ago. Mhm. Mhm. Yes, I think I would summarize all these ideas that I have into one simple thing, which is being flexible. When I say being flexible, it means you always need to be prepared, right? I don't improvise sessions in general. Maybe at some point, if I had to do that, because I don't know, I was like crazy busy one week, and it didn't happen with this group, but with other groups. I always found that very unpleasant, and people can tell that as well if you're improvising, basically. So even though I've been doing this for a while, I always have some planning for each session, including the different times that I'm going to dedicate to different activities. Now, most of the time, I end up changing that planning on the spot, and that is by just trying not to impose my ideas, my feelings, my plans to what the group needs on the day. And it could be because of many different reasons. It could be because, I don't know, we usually have more singers and then the singers didn't come that week. It could be because the energy is completely different. Everybody's, I don't know, it might be raining a lot and everybody feels a little bit low. So I am always open to what I'm always open to how people feel, and that is not an easy thing to do. I think it's crazy hard to read the room sometimes, and especially in new scenarios like this was for me. Especially in the first couple of weeks, I was always very, very careful with just taking a few seconds just to see what's happening in the room and not just concentrating what I wanted to do or what would be easier to do as well. Sometimes you feel tempted to do that, to just go with the easy option and just, I don't know, do the session the way that I had it planned beforehand. So being flexible, I think it's one of the most important things, and it's not an easy thing to develop, especially when working with different needs from different groups. There's always a transition, and of course, if you have a similar group every week, eventually it gets easier. But in many settings, I just have new people coming every week, and maybe you have some regulars. So it's always well, this takes me to the last thing I had in mind, which is it's okay not to know certain things, right? And that's something that, again, you would try to show everybody in the room that you know absolutely what you're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing all the time, but and that's another thing that people can tell. So it's you may also feel the pressure of just carrying on when something is not working. So diverting and redoing the activity in a different way, it might be a better solution for that. Or just taking a pause. I've been like working with some trainees with the Misfits and in other scenarios. And it's one of the most important things that I can see when people are starting to do it for the first time, that they feel that, I don't know, I cover this activity in less time than what I had planned, and I don't know what to do, so I'm just gonna improvise and go with it. And sometimes it's okay to just, okay, people, we're gonna take 5 minutes, or I just need to get a glass of water. I don't know. Or if someone asks you something and you don't have the answer for it, don't lie, or don't try to, again, just improvise and say something fancy that makes no sense. Just say, I'll get back to you. That's a very good question, to which I don't have the answer at the moment, but I will definitely look into it and I'll get back to you later on. That is something that it's okay to do. And that when I started, I felt that was very hard. I felt that I had to have all the answers all the time. Otherwise, that would show weakness, and it's quite the opposite. So those are the things that I had like prepared. I don't know if you have any specific questions. I tried to keep it simple, and I hope half of the things that I said made sense. But
No, it's great. Thank you. Because I want to chunk this into audible sections so that people can maybe listen to bits when they're walking, or more than likely, if you're a musician, driving. Um,
yes,
it's in the car.
very likely.
So there's lots of things we're taking for granted at the moment. So I'm taking for granted I know what the space looks like, and I know what the room looks like, and what the people look like, and who's in there. And yet, if I compare the SVI rocks with all the workshops and choirs I've ever run with visual people, actually, of course, it's really different. So, from your perspective, because it sounds much nicer coming from your voice, can you describe the environment and how it might be different to the other spaces you've been in? For example, dogs.
I think those were absolutely fine. That's another thing that I didn't find stressful at all. I think, yeah, just be mindful that they are there, and that they, if we're doing, as you actually pointed out during the concert, which was great. Like if we're being loud, the dogs are gonna react to it. So it's just, I think, just naming that before you start an activity, which I didn't during the sessions, and it's one of the things that I would do next time. I just assumed, for example, that everybody in the room knew the dogs were there and how would that work, but not necessarily, right? So it's just acknowledging the different species in the room. It's a good thing. But in terms of the environment in general, I felt it was not that different for me, at least, compared to the other groups, because I always tend to try different things with this group in particular, because of how the room worked for us, which means that we had very comfy chairs, for example. That doesn't happen in all rooms. We had instruments where that they needed a little bit more space, like the keyboard, and we had a table there, so there was nothing that we needed to adapt necessarily. It was much more about how would I position myself in the room, and something that I tried different things, like when to use the mic or not, when to sit with the rest of the group or not. I never, for example, asked them to stand up, and I never thought about it up until now. That was much more of a reflex from my side, because I could see that it would cost more trouble than anything else. Thinking about the dogs, for example, right? If they would stand up, the dogs would immediately think that maybe they're working, and that would change. And people might not feel as comfortable standing up because you don't feel, just comfortable knowing where everything is, knowing that you have a table in front of you, that your cup of tea is in front of you. So that is something that I didn't think about it while I was doing the sessions, but that I think it was a good choice not to ask them to stand up, as I would usually do with everybody in all other groups when we're performing, for example, right? And there's like a phrase that I use a lot while doing trainings with Tony. I was happy that he mentioned this again, because it's another thing that I think I kind of incorporated to my speech in general, but that I don't realize that I use it quite a lot, which is, if you're comfortable with this, like, well, you can close your eyes if you're comfortable doing this. If you feel comfortable standing up because it feels good, you can stand up. It's not telling people what to do, just giving them options, basically. And yes, in terms of the room itself, again, I didn't have to move them around at all, which was a good thing. But maybe if the instruments were different, if the group was much bigger, that would have changed. It happens to me quite often, especially if you have like a drum kit in the room, for example, a big drum kit, or if you have much more electric guitars. Like, okay, how do you organize the room so everybody feels okay? so it's not too loud. And if we were a really, really large group, probably that room wouldn't work for us, right? I think the room worked because of the number of people, because of the variety of instruments that we had. And I was very happy about that. But if the needs of the groups are different, again, it's okay to change it and try not to push, a very uncomfortable situation just again, because it would be easier. It would be difficult in other ways, but it's an easy choice as well to say, well, let's just find a room to sit. Everybody's here, it's fine, and just find a place, and we'll do the session anyway. It's like if there's something that doesn't work, if you have people that listen to you, right? Which in other workplaces maybe that's not the case. Maybe they don't care that much, unfortunately. But if you have people that listen to you, like in this case, it's important to really, really push those things a little bit more and just try to give the group the best possibilities that you can.
That's lovely. Thanks, Han. I've put a question here. I've just thought, oh yeah, because you are so very good at being flexible on the spot, and I have watched you adapt your teaching within seconds of being in a space, which is an absolute joy to watch, by the way. And also because you just do it, I feel I have to tease things out of you because I just think you're able to rewire your brain at this phenomenal speed to adapt to whatever situation's in front of you. So I'm going to bring up one of the things with when one is leading choirs or a group. So I obviously my background is far more choir based than band based. Is that choirs are so very visual, groups are so very visual. So if I need a group of people to listen to me, I just put both my hands in the air and there's this silence. It's like, oh, that doesn't work because you all can't see me. Or that, I don't know, if it was a classical person talking to me about it, it's like, well, how do you count people in? Oh, that's a good point. And I noticed with the band situation as well, you did actually adapt the way that you were sort of bringing people in or sort of bringing the band to an end. Can you talk about that process? Because I think anyone who, like me, before I'd worked with visually impaired people, my first reaction would be, oh my God, I'm so darn visual. I conduct in such a visual way. I don't know how to bring people in or get their attention. So tell me about, if you can, your process of how you manage that with our rock group.
Yeah, I think I can. I think, of course, that the music style, it helps, right? If you're doing an a cappella piece for a choir and you don't want to count them in, it's a little bit of a tough call. I would need to think about how to do that. But in a rock scenario, it's way easier because you can just use like a classic cue, like the drumsticks, right? But in general, I did have to change a lot. I tend to use my hands a lot when I'm leading, and I realized that the first time that we were there with Jim, the first time that we did Brown Rocks, I was like, okay, well, it's okay to do it anyway because it's the way that I lead, but at the same time, it's not dependent on those things. So in general, when I'm working with bands, again, pop, rock, I lead with my instrument anyway. I mainly lead with my guitar, but again, I do that in a very visual way, which is I tend to dance around or jump to give cues. And again, I knew that wouldn't work. So I had to use my voice much more. I say this a lot, again, to my trainees, for example, that just trying to find the balance with, you need to find something that works for you and at the same time that works for the group, right? And also trying to find that balance all the time, that when you're leading, you're not performing, right? You're not the performer, which can feel very tempting sometimes because you're playing a song that you like and you can just let go and sing and play. So it's how you can use your voice when you are singing to give specific cues, right? If you have a singer in the group and they are doing the singing, when you come in to sing might mean something different. It might actually be a cue that something is happening, right? small things, like trying to depend much more in this case in the musicality of the work that you're doing. And the same applies to my guitar. If I'm playing something that would be a lead, for example, to start a song, one way, I think we played I'm a Believer, for example. A couple of times I just did it during the rehearsals. I did it with my guitar because there's a tiny intro. And I would say like, okay, I'll play the intro and we all come in after that. And again, because of the music style, at the end, it was way easier just to say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we start together because it works. But if the music was different, I would have thought of a different way of coming in and use the resources that you have in the room, like use the instruments and the people that you have in the room. You make it fun for them as well. And finally, I think I started, this relates to the room again. I could see how, I actually noticed this because the dogs were reacting to it as well, which is if I was stomping on the floor with my foot, that helped a lot. I realized that instead of counting in my mouth, I just kept the beat, and then all of a sudden Bill would know when to come in and sing, or things like that. And I realized that just because I started doing it, and the dogs were like, okay, they were asleep, and all of a sudden they're awake. So it's I think again, you cannot really prepare too much those things because you would be guessing, and you're not gonna know until you're there, and it's okay. That's okay. It's a little bit. This is coming from a very anxious person. It's okay. In general, it's gonna be like that. You don't know what's gonna happen once you get to that place. You can only prepare. Well, I think this can help actually as well. I always tend to have a plan B, and that gives me a little bit of peace of mind before going to a new setting, which is okay. We're gonna do this, just in case I'm gonna have this second plan in my head that I don't really use that much, but it's there just in case I need it, and that helps me. Yeah, it gives me a little bit of reassurance that yes, I'm prepared to do this.
Great, thanks, Sam. And then finally, I should have done this at the beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about you, including your name, Misfits, and also how people could find your work?
All right. Well, I am Rodrigo Orquera, and it's a very, very hard name to say, so this is why people call me Rod, and I'm very happy with that. And I work for Misfit Music, among other charities, but mainly for Misfit Music. And the easy way of of naming what we do is we try to bring people together through music, and we have different settings within the organization. I work with all the rock collectives in general, which are all the rock groups. But we had instrumental groups, which are like tiny orchestras where people read music. So what I do in my groups is mainly play by ear. And yeah, all instruments, all abilities are welcome. So the usual challenge, which is the fun part, is trying to make that work, right? And not to for people to be scary or boring if you are an advanced player and you're coming to one of these groups. About myself, I'm a music leader. I'm a composer. I'm a writer as well. I've been playing and singing for a long time. I do play different instruments, but I mainly play guitar, and I sing, and I'm a songwriter as well. So I have a musical project that is called ROV, which are my initials. And so I've been, yeah, playing my own music. When I find the time, I try to make the time for that as well. And yes, I got involved, especially I've done a lot of teaching in many different levels. I've done a lot of teaching in schools, I used to teach at the university where I studied in Buenos Aires in Argentina. And I started connecting with community music, I would say not that long ago, thinking about my working life, right? It's been 3 to 4 years ago. And I saw a whole new world opening up for me in those places. And I just felt so happy because I didn't see anything like that before, especially in my country. I didn't see those possibilities. And it's we at Misfits, we always say that the music, it comes second, that what we do is about the people. And that's what I enjoy. The thing that I enjoy the most about the work that I do is that it's how to connect, basically, and it's through music that we do it. So it's not important to have a perfect performance. It's not important to have a perfect piece of music done. The important thing is that we are enjoying ourselves and then we are working together. I think I didn't miss any parts of your question. I'm not sure.
No, it was great. Thank you. And finally, do you have a website? Or you could give both if you wish, Misfits and your own if you wish.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Misfits is, I want to get this right. I'm gonna check just in case. But the website for the Misfits is misfitsmusic.org.uk. And well, the easiest thing about my music would be to look it up as ROV Music. And there's a Linktree website with all the different links and access to all the platforms where to stream my music as well. But yeah, it's ROV, which is, I wish it would be easier to find, but it's not that easy. But if you put ROV Music, it's there.
Excellent. Brilliant. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I've said it before, but it's been, yeah, if I'm being honest, it's been one of the best experiences I had in if it's not in forever, it's in since I started doing this kind of work. And again, that's not that common, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. So I thank you for doing this as well, which I think it's great if it can definitely help or encourage people to do this more. That would make me very happy.
Thanks for listening. If you're interested in making your work accessible to our Sandwell visually impaired community, you can find more information, downloadable sheets, stories and infocasts at sandwellvisuallyimpaired.org.uk, supporting each other accessibility, or you can dip over to sarahannecromwell.com.